You wake up when the alarm screams. You stumble to the bathroom, already defeated by the mere act of rising. You check your phone before your feet touch the ground, feeding yourself digital sewage before you've even remembered who you are. You negotiate with yourself about the workout you'll skip, the work you'll postpone, the conversation you'll avoid. And you call this living. You call this freedom. But let me tell you what it actually is. It's rehearsal for your own funeral. Every compromise you make with yourself before breakfast is another shovel of dirt on the grave of the man you could have become. The world doesn't fear you. Your competitors don't lose sleep thinking about you. Your name doesn't make anyone straighten their spine or reconsider their strategy. You are furniture in the lives of others, present, functional, utterly forgettable. And the most devastating part? You've made peace with this. You've wrapped your mediocrity in the language of balance, of self-care, of being realistic. You've become so skilled at justifying your weakness that you've forgotten its weakness at all. Here's what they never told you. Your entire life has been a domestication project. From the moment you entered institutional education, you were taught that compliance yields rewards, that fitting in ensures survival, that your value is determined by how little disruption you cause to the existing order. They taught you to sit still, raise your hand, wait your turn, color inside the lines. They taught you that discipline is what others impose on you, not what you impose on yourself. And worst of all, they taught you that wanting power is shameful. You absorbed these lessons so thoroughly that you now police yourself more effectively than any external authority ever could. You've internalized the voice of every teacher who told you to lower your expectations, every parent who warned you against standing out, every peer who mocked your ambition. You've become the warden of your own prison, and you've decorated the cell so pleasantly that you've forgotten you're imprisoned at all. This is why you flinch at the word discipline. It reminds you of punishment, of arbitrary rules, of your childhood helplessness. So you've rebranded your lack of self-control as spontaneity. You've called your inability to delay gratification living in the moment. You've transformed your fear of discomfort into a philosophy of balance. But these are just prettier words for the same old weakness, the same capitulation to your base impulses, the same surrender to the path of least resistance. The result? You've become predictable. And in a world where power accumulates to those who can endure what others cannot, predictability is a death sentence. Your boss knows exactly how much pressure you'll tolerate before breaking. Your competitors know exactly how much sacrifice you're willing to make. Your own body knows exactly how much discomfort you'll endure before retreating to comfort. You've shown everyone your limits, and now they use those limits to contain you. Most people reach this realization and immediately begin searching for life hacks, for shortcuts, for some technique that will give them the appearance of transformation without the actual cost. They want discipline that doesn't require discipline. They want sovereignty without sacrifice. This is the final delusion, the last refuge of the weak. The belief that there's an easy way, a secret door, a cheat code that the disciplined have discovered and are hiding from everyone else. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something that makes modern people deeply uncomfortable. The world is not designed to reward your good intentions. It's designed to reward your capacity to endure, to execute, to impose your will on circumstances that would break lesser men. He watched the soft princes of Italy lose their territories to harder men, watched as good-hearted rulers who believed in fairness and clemency were destroyed by those who understood the mechanics of power. And he wrote his observations not as advocacy for cruelty, but as documentation of reality. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves, Machiavelli wrote. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. But here's what he understood that you've forgotten. Becoming the fox and the lion requires discipline so absolute, so uncompromising, that it frightens people who've grown comfortable in their weakness. It requires you to develop a relationship with yourself based not on negotiation, but on command. Discipline, in the Machiavellian sense, is not about following rules. It's about becoming the kind of person who doesn't need rules because your internal governance is so absolute that external constraints become irrelevant. It's about developing such mastery over your impulses, your fears, your comfort-seeking nature, that you can deploy yourself like a weapon precisely when and where circumstances demand it. This is what separates the sovereign from the subject. The sovereign obeys no one because he has learned to obey himself completely. When Machiavelli advised princes to be feared rather than loved if they could not be both, he wasn't advocating for cruelty. He was acknowledging that love is fickle, dependent on the other person's emotional state, their current needs, their temporary perception of you. But fear born from witnessed competence, from demonstrated capacity, from the absolute reliability of your discipline, is stable. When people know you will do exactly what you said you would do, when you've proven that your word is more binding than any contract, when they've watched you endure what would have broken them, they reorganize their reality around you. Not because they want to, but because they must. This is the power of discipline. It makes you a fixed point in an uncertain world. While everyone else is negotiating with themselves, adjusting their commitments based on how they feel, explaining why this time is different, you become inevitable. And inevitability is the most powerful force in human affairs. Inside your skull lives a voice that has killed more dreams than any external enemy ever could. This voice wakes up with you every morning and immediately begins the negotiation. You're tired, it says. You've been working so hard, you deserve a break. One day won't matter. You'll start tomorrow. You'll start Monday. You'll start after this project, after this trip, after this difficult period passes. This voice has 1,000 arguments, and every single one of them sounds reasonable in the moment. This is the genius of self-sabotage. It doesn't announce itself as sabotage. It wraps itself in the language of self-care, of listening to your body, of not being too hard on yourself. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like balance. It sounds like self-love. But it's none of those things. It's the desperate last stand of the weak part of you that knows it's about to be overthrown. To become disciplined in the way that makes others fear you, you must first commit an act of internal violence. You must kill this voice, not negotiate with it, not compromise with it, not find a middle ground. Kill it. This sounds extreme because it is extreme. But understand this, that voice isn't trying to protect you. It's trying to protect itself. It knows that the disciplined version of you has no need for it, that your transformation is its extinction. So it will fight for survival with every weapon at its disposal, and its favorite weapon is making you think that listening to it is somehow a form of self-respect. Here's how you kill it. You stop treating your commitments to yourself as suggestions. When you say you'll wake at 5, you wake at 5, not 5:15, not after just one more snooze cycle. 5. When you say you'll train for an hour, you train for an hour. When you say you'll work on that project before you check your phone, you work on that project. No exceptions, no negotiations, no consideration for how you feel about it in the moment. The first few times you do this, that voice will scream. It will manufacture every emotion, every physical sensation, every rationalization to get you to compromise. You'll feel anxiety. You'll feel exhaustion that seems to materialize from nowhere. You'll suddenly remember urgent tasks you need to handle first. Your body will produce symptoms. Your mind will generate crises. This is the negotiator deploying its entire arsenal, and you must not flinch. Because here's the secret. That voice has no actual power. It can argue, but it cannot force. It can suggest, but it cannot compel. Its only power is the power you've always given it. The power to veto your decisions based on momentary discomfort. The moment you start executing despite its protests, you reveal it for what it actually is, empty noise, the death rattle of a part of you that's already obsolete. Within weeks of absolute consistency, something remarkable happens. The voice grows quieter, Not because you've convinced it, but because you've demonstrated that you're no longer listening. It still makes its arguments, but they land in empty space because you're already doing the thing it's trying to talk you out of. Eventually, it stops wasting energy on arguments that produce no results. This is the first death, and it's the foundation of everything that follows. Most people think of discipline as a constant battle, a daily war against their weaker impulses. They wake up every morning and white-knuckle their way through their commitments, consuming enormous amounts of willpower just to do what they already know they should do. This is why they fail. This is why they cycle through periods of intense effort followed by collapse. They're trying to win the same battle over and over again instead of ending the war. The disciplined man builds architecture, not willpower. He constructs his life in such a way that the right actions become inevitable and the wrong actions become difficult. He doesn't waste mental energy deciding whether to train each morning. He's already at the gym before his consciousness has fully assembled itself. He doesn't deliberate about starting his deep work. His environment is already optimized to make distraction harder than focus. He doesn't rely on motivation because he's engineered a system where motivation is irrelevant. This is the difference between the amateur and the master. The amateur uses discipline to force himself into action despite his environment and habits. The master uses discipline once to construct an environment and habit structure that makes the desired actions the path of least resistance. The amateur fights himself daily. The master fought himself once, won decisively, and built a kingdom on the battlefield. Your morning is the foundation of this architecture. Not because mornings are mystical, but because how you handle the first moment of potential negotiation sets the template for every negotiation that follows. When that alarm sounds and your body wants to remain in warmth and unconsciousness, you are at a crossroads. Take the comfortable path, and you've just taught yourself that your commitments are negotiable, that your future self's needs can be sacrificed to your present self's comfort. Take the disciplined path, and you've just proven to yourself that you're the kind of person who does what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel about it. This is why the disciplined man protects his mornings with religious fervor. Before he engages with anyone else's agenda, before he allows external demands to fragment his attention, before he surrenders his mental clarity to the chaos of incoming information, he handles what matters. He moves his body. He engages his mind with difficult work. He advances his agenda. By the time most people are deciding whether to hit snooze again, he's already won the day. And here's what happens. People notice. They notice that you're different. They notice that you don't make excuses. They notice that your word to yourself is as binding as any contract, and they extrapolate. If he's this reliable with himself, imagine how reliable he'll be with his word to me. If he can endure this kind of self-imposed rigor, imagine what he's capable of when external stakes are involved. If he's conquered himself this thoroughly, what chance do I have in opposing him? This is how discipline creates fear, not fear of your anger or your violence, but fear of your capacity, fear of your inevitability, fear that you'll simply outlast them, outwork them, out-execute them while they're still negotiating with themselves about getting started. Let me tell you something that no one wants to say out loud. The path of discipline is lonely, not because you'll lose friends, though you will, but because you'll undergo a transformation that most people cannot comprehend and will not support. You'll become incomprehensible to the person you were and incompatible with the people who knew that person. When you stop making excuses, you'll notice how much of social bonding is collective excuse-making. When you stop complaining about circumstances you could change, you'll notice how much of conversation is just collaborative victimhood. When you stop negotiating with yourself, you'll become intolerant of others' endless negotiations. The people around you will sense this change, and many of them will resent it, not because you've done anything to them, but because your transformation is an implicit criticism of their stagnation. They'll call you obsessed. They'll warn you about balance. They'll express concern for your well-being. They'll share articles about the importance of rest and the dangers of pushing too hard. And they'll mean well, most of them. But what they're actually saying is, please stop changing. Your growth is making my stagnation uncomfortable. Your discipline makes my lack of it harder to ignore. Come back down to where I am, where we can continue being mediocre together. You must not listen to them. Not because they're bad people, but because they're speaking from a different reality. One you're in the process of leaving. They're trying to protect the friendship, the dynamic, the shared identity that your transformation threatens. But you cannot protect relationships by betraying yourself. You cannot maintain connections by staying small. The people who truly matter will either rise with you or support your rising even as they choose a different path. This loneliness is not a bug. It's a feature. It's the necessary cost of sovereignty. The herd moves together, thinks together, fears together. The sovereign stands alone, makes decisions from his own counsel, bears the weight of his own choices. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that the prince must learn to act alone, to trust his own judgment above the opinions of the crowd, because the crowd is governed by comfort and consensus, while power is governed by reality and results. In this loneliness, you'll discover something unexpected. You were never truly connected to most people anyway. What you thought were friendships were often just shared complaints, mutual enabling, collaborative time-wasting. When you remove yourself from these dynamics, you don't lose relationships. You reveal that they were never there in any meaningful sense. What remains, the relationships that survive your transformation, those become more valuable than everything you left behind. And you'll find new connections, different connections. People who recognize something in you because they've walked this path themselves. People who don't need to be convinced that discipline is valuable because they've already paid the price and claimed the rewards. These relationships are rare, but they're forged from mutual respect rather than mutual weakness, and that makes them unbreakable. Here's what happens when you've internalized discipline so thoroughly that it becomes your default operating system. You become dangerous. Not in the conventional sense, not as a threat of violence or harm, but as a force that others must account for, plan around, prepare against. You become the person that competitors study, the person that markets adjust to, the person that organizations cannot ignore. This happens because consistency is the most underestimated power in human affairs. Everyone has moments of brilliance, bursts of productivity, periods of intense focus. But these are fireworks, impressive, brief, ultimately inconsequential. You're building something different. You're building a machine that runs regardless of conditions, that produces regardless of mood, that advances regardless of obstacles. While others are waiting for inspiration or motivation or the right circumstances, you're executing. While they're explaining why this month is particularly difficult, you're delivering results. While they're planning to start soon, you've already finished. The gap compounds, not linearly, but exponentially, because every day of disciplined action doesn't just move you forward, it builds capacity that makes tomorrow's action more effective. Your body adapts to the physical demands you place on it. Your mind develops tolerance for cognitive strain. Your emotional system learns to process discomfort without derailing. You're not just doing more, you're becoming capable of more. And this capability gap is what creates fear, because people can dismiss talent. They can attribute success to luck, to connections, to advantages they themselves lack. But they cannot dismiss discipline. Discipline is the one advantage that is completely democratically available, that requires no permission, no special circumstance, no genetic lottery. When someone is out disciplining them, they have no excuses left. They're forced to confront the reality that the only thing separating them from you is the willingness to endure what you endure. And most people, when confronted with this reality, discover they're not willing. That discovery is terrifying. So they'll try different strategies to neutralize you. They'll attempt to undermine your credibility, to highlight your failures, to find the flaw in your approach. When that doesn't work, they'll try to co-opt you, to bring you into their orbit where your discipline serves their agenda instead of your own. When that fails, they'll isolate you, exclude you, attempt to marginalize you. And when all of that proves insufficient, They'll do the only thing left. They'll fear you. They'll work around you. They'll try not to compete directly with you. They'll hope you choose a different battlefield. This is the weaponization of the self. Not learning to fight, but becoming so formidable through sheer capacity and consistency that direct confrontation becomes the last resort rather than the first. You win most conflicts before they begin because your reputation for reliability, for execution, for enduring and delivering precedes you. People do the math and realize that opposing you is expensive, that matching your commitment level is painful, that waiting for you to quit is futile. Let me paint you a picture of where this path leads. You wake before dawn, not because you have to, but because you've rewired yourself to want to. Your body rises from sleep with energy because you've treated it like the high-performance instrument it is. Your mind is clear because you've protected it from the digital poison that everyone else consumes before consciousness fully forms. The first 2 hours of your day are already yours. You've moved, you've thought, you've created, before most people have decided whether to get out of bed. You move through your day with a calm that others mistake for indifference, but it's not indifference. It's the confidence of someone who knows exactly who he is and exactly what he's capable of. When challenges emerge, you don't experience the panic that others feel because you've trained yourself to see obstacles as information rather than threats. When opportunities appear, you don't hesitate or second-guess because you've built the capacity to act decisively. You've become the kind of person who creates more value than he consumes, and the world reorganizes itself to keep such people close. Your relationships are different now. The people around you are there because they value what you've become, not because they're comfortable with who you were. They don't need to be managed or coddled or convinced. They operate at your level, or they're actively working to get there, or they respect the path even as they choose differently. The emotional labor of maintaining relationships with people who drain your energy has been eliminated. What remains is connection based on mutual growth rather than mutual stagnation. Your work is different. You're no longer trading time for money, competence for compensation. You're being sought out for your capacity to execute, to endure, to deliver when others fold. The discipline you've cultivated becomes leverage. The same commitment that gets you to the gym at 5 gets applied to your career, your business, your craft. And because consistency compounds, you're not just incrementally better than your peers, you're categorically different. You've entered a tier where different rules apply because different capabilities exist. But more than any external achievement, you've won the only war that actually matters, the war with yourself. You no longer wake up wondering if you'll follow through. You no longer make promises to yourself that you might keep. You no longer negotiate with your own commitments. You've become integrated, whole, reliable to yourself. And from that foundation, everything else becomes possible. This is not a fantasy. This is the documented reality of every person who has chosen discipline over comfort, sovereignty over social approval, long-term transformation over short-term ease. The path is clear. The requirements are non-negotiable. The cost is high, but the alternative, remaining who you are, compromising who you could become, dying with your potential intact, that cost is infinitely higher. So here's your moment of truth. You've read this far, which means something in you recognizes itself in these words. Some part of you knows that the life you're living is smaller than the life you're capable of. Some part of you is exhausted from negotiating with yourself, from making and breaking promises, from explaining away another year of unrealized potential. That part is ready for something different. The question is, are you? Because subscribing to this channel is not about entertainment. It's not about collecting information or feeling momentarily inspired. It's about making a commitment to yourself that from this point forward, you're going to stop negotiating. You're going to stop making excuses. You're going to stop treating your future self's needs as less important than your present self's comfort. You're going to start building the architecture of discipline that will carry you from who you are to who you're meant to be. This will be uncomfortable. It will be lonely. It will require you to disappoint people who prefer the weaker version of you. It will demand that you kill parts of yourself that have kept you safe, kept you small, kept you acceptable. But the alternative is continuing to live a negotiated existence, forever compromising between what you want and what's easy, forever explaining to yourself why this time is different, why you'll start later, why the circumstances aren't quite right yet. The world doesn't need more people who are good at explaining why they're not succeeding. It needs people who understand that discipline is the foundation of power, that consistency is the ultimate weapon, that sovereignty is won through absolute self-governance. It needs people who make others uncomfortable with their capacity, their reliability, their refusal to accept limitations that everyone else treats as fixed. Become that person. Subscribe. Commit. Begin. The path is waiting, but it won't wait forever. Every day you delay is another day you remain who you've always been. And who you've always been has gotten you exactly where you are right now. If that's acceptable to you, close this video and return to your negotiations, your explanations, your comfortable mediocrity. But if something in you is screaming that you were meant for more, then stop reading and start acting. Your transformation begins the moment you decide that your word to yourself is law, not someday, now. Subscribe if you're ready. The rest will follow.